Good morning, people! Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with Come on, Kiri, get your ball! With me and Kiri, who I'm trying to get to squeak for you. Get your ball! She's like, nope. The fun is gone. We know the fun is here, though. Unlike Kiri, who refuses to squeak for you this morning, apparently it's just not a happy Monday for her. But here we are again with another episode of Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied voice, Justin, and non-squeaking Kiri. Yes, there's the Kiri. There's the Kiri emoji. Kiri emoji. We have a Kiri emoji for my my stream, Justin. I don't know if you saw it, but Chibi Amy just used it.
Oh, I love it.
Isn't it cute? It's a little Chibi Kiri dog. It's so
Yeah,
adorable.
that is cute.
So yeah, so we have it on my Patreon Discord, and we have it on my Twitch. So it's adorable. And Chibi Amy's daughter drew it. So very very talented, and we are totally grateful. Yeah, totally with the finger hearts for sure. Yes, awesome. Hello, everybody. Oh, Chinner, it's been forever since I've seen you. Welcome back. And Netta TN. I think you're vaguely familiar. I don't usually see you chat, I think, Netta, but I think I've seen you before. Or are you new? If you're new, welcome. If you're something in my head says I've seen you before, but you know it's my head and well, fallible, like all of me. Oh, you even got a gifted sub. Oh, hey, On the Road to Tiamat has a 8-month resub. Thank you. Thank you. Not new. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. I remembered you vaguely. Like, I usually actually have a pretty good memory for who's new. As far as who's in chat, right? Okay, so you lurk and you just don't chat. Okay, that's cool, Chainer. That's spiffy-tastic. Yeah? Yeah, right, Val. Trolling. We need a trolling emote. Kiri with the happy with the Kiri with I like Kiri with the Mercy wings from Overwatch. That's my favorite since I love Mercy and I love Kiri. And Mercy with the dragon wings from Painting Big. All right, guys, we're sphinxing today. I almost didn't sphinx today. I primed Ms. Fairweather from the ReaperCon models. Let me go to Minicam. So we have a pirate. We have a pirate to paint. I did a very light zenith on her to just pick out her details. So we're going to be working on her in coming days, but I decided that I wanted to do black hair on the Sphinx today. No, I posted on the Discord when I got it back. It was just they weren't sure that it was going to be back before the stream was going to be, either midway or ended, so it wasn't a big deal. But yeah, so Pirate Girl's coming up at some point. I figure a lot of you have her. The other thing I wanted to do before Halloween, Justin, was actually, since people always ask me for it, and I'm always like, about it, but I got a good ghoulie bag because I placed the Reaper order, so I have the Wraith. The transparent Wraith. So we might do a transparent Wraith painting stream, since all of you have transparent Wraiths. Hey, Rex. But yeah, okay, so let's get some black. Anyway, the cool thing with black, y'all, is that you really can highlight it with any color. Now, usually you don't want to highlight it with any color, unless there's a reason for it, or, you gotta have it work with your color scheme, right? So, but Miss Sphinx is kind of a neutral color scheme. I mean, she's got a lot of beiges and tans and browns, and so I can get away. I've got, as far as the cat slimes, not on Reaper, I think, on my own stream, I can do a kitty. Because Rex sent me very nicely his cat slimes, which are very creepy cat slime. But not a Reaper model, so cannot do on Reaper stream. Sorry, my AC is blowing warm air. This is intolerable. One second. Hold that thought on the Sphinx. I'm going to turn it off rather than leave it on. It's annoying me. Kiri, I just realized it was getting warmer in here instead of colder. This is really not good. we can't get it to work, Kiri, we'll have to open up the window or the door, or both. We're going to give it one more chance. Sorry for the interruption, everybody. Chat amongst yourselves while I fight with my unit that keeps it tolerable in this room. Are you going to work now, you little bleeding thing? It appears to be blowing cool air. We will see, Kiri dog. Kiri's very confused. She's like, I stood up. I wasn't sure what you were doing. All right. We can't have outdoor tree trimming noise, but we definitely can't have warm air. So yeah, if that doesn't manage to like get better, then we're gonna have to turn it off. Sorry guys, I just have to be comfortable in here if I'm gonna sit for an hour and paint, if you know what I mean. You know, sweat rolling down my forehead is not going to work. Yeah, I was thinking that, you know, Mad Zeke, just because everybody's getting one. And I mean, like I said, I don't, it's, painting transparents isn't really, like, my thing, because you can't paint them very much. In most cases, you just want to put little touches of paint on them. But that'll be good. Hey, Ink and Ignorance. Yes, it moved to this Friday, Dogfather, because I couldn't, because of power being out, I couldn't do it last week. Coding Horse, thank you with the Prime sub. I think I've seen you in chat. So welcome. Again, welcome back. Yes, or maybe I saw you on mine. See, this is the problem now. I have a great memory for who is new in chat in general. Like, I can tell if I haven't seen a name before, usually, or haven't seen it in a very long time. But now that I do my own stream and Reaper's stream, I'm going to forget, like, who's new on which stream. Because I suppose I could get people who are new on my stream coming to Reaper, and then I'll remember them, but they'll be new to this stream. Ah, there we go. It's got some blackout. Yes, hello. Because people who like my other stream probably would still like this stream, so. Alrighty. So I'm not going to thin my black very much. This is a base coat, and it's straight over bones, no primer. So I will just pretty much do like a 6-to-1, 7-to-1. I just put a big puddle of black down and put a drop of water in it. You just want to get a nice solid coat, as always. But our black covers so well that it doesn't, you know. You can thin it a little, and in my mind, I always like to thin it a little, which is why I wash my Bones Minis. Yeah, pure black, Iffy. We're highlighting black with color today. That is what we are doing. And if you are going to highlight black with a color, you should start with black. Unless you have a specific thing in mind, such as starting with walnut brown instead because you're going up with orange or red, which makes sense since walnut is a very, 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 very black brown. We have some beads in her hair, but I'm probably going to paint everything black at first. But yeah, every once in a while I like to do this. It only really works on monsters and other unnatural things. As highlighting black with really unnatural colors. But in reality, you can highlight your black with pretty much anything. I did not see Liquid Nebulous thingy. I missed it. I do like Sphinxy. I like how she's turning out so far, which is good. Yeah, you don't want to use Nightmare Purple without using it, like, if you're using it as a shadow for Imperial, do a 50-50 mix. That Purple Triad is all that way, Val. as you should be able to like intuitively know that because of the big difference in the bottle. When you look at them, when you look at colors in a triad and they look really different to you, always do a 50-50 mix first. You may not want to go all the way down to the shadow if it's really dark. Especially if you are thinking of using it on the skin tones, which you were, Val. I would say it's good for blocking in the eyes and the line of the mouth, but I would not use it elsewhere. Now, at some point back here, we're going to have to make, and there's a kind of a line on one side. I don't think it appears on the other side, though. But you guys can see this little barrette thing almost. It's just like a line there. I could use that to divide her hair from the, you know, her mane from her back hair. Or I'm not sure exactly how to interpret that little line. So we'll see. It's there. It's sculpted in. So I feel like I should use it as a like kind of a hair tie of sorts because, I mean, she's got like little beads in her hair here and she's got a crown. So it could be ornamentation. In which case my question for myself is, should I continue the black down here? And the answer probably is yes. I was going to go with lion color here, but since it seems like it's her mane and it's just growing, you know, continues to grow down her back a little bit, then I probably need to go dark with this hair, even though I'm going lighter with everything else. David is not. Mondays are his really heavy meeting mornings usually, so. Wings and the horns. Yeah. Yeah, depending on what you're going to highlight it with, Val, that can work. Cool. You made an image of betrayal, yeah. Yeah, QB is here as always. Yeah, this is Sphinxy. We're working on Sphinx. Been wanting to paint this model for a very long time. Every once in a while, Bob and Julie have been bopping in to see progress. David's computer is going to kind of make musical noises at us, even though he's not here. So we'll leave her crown there. I painted over the beads on one side, and I'll paint over the beads on the other side. Then I'll just go back with white and pick them out before I make them bright Egyptian colors. And you want to be a little careful since you've got ears already, of course, and everything like that. And the thing is that when you're base coating with black, you really don't want to get it onto anything that you are going to paint brightly later. So like this here, which is going to be full of NMM gold and bright colors of inlay, like turquoise and lapis and carnelian. All of that needs to really not get black on it. And if you do get black on it, you need to paint white over the black, probably. Black just always makes everything darker when it's an undercoat. So I'm going to be quite careful when I'm applying my black near areas that I want to be light, which is going to be the case a lot of the time when you're using black. If you're going for contrast, you're going to be using black near areas that are going to be brighter or lighter so that you can make all your details stand out. Now, here on her neck, I will have to bring up I haven't brought up any of the veins or, you know, the tendon here. To make her skin a little bit lighter on the neck. The neck's still mostly base coated. For some reason, I forgot to do that. So what I'll have to do is definitely do that in order to make it different from the hair. But the other thing that will help is that we're going to use blue to highlight the hair. And the skin will come up golden. So that will, even though those are two dark shadows next to each other, it will hopefully help make those details stand out. Because otherwise, that would be very troublesome. Putting one very dark area near another very dark area is not a good strategy in miniature painting. Unless you can really differentiate them. But you can see how well the black covers, even slightly thinned. The other thing that making her hair black lets us do is it lets us open up to using black on a little bit more of the model for accents. So if her hair is black, then I know I can use some black accents on the feathers of the wings and it's going to look right, right? Because you already have black on the model. Whereas if the entire model had been like beige or pale colored, or I'd gone with white hair or golden or anything else, putting black patterns on the wings would then look a little bit out of place because she wouldn't have black anywhere else on the model. So when you're doing things like this, keep that in mind, that you want to repeat colors around the model. If you want to give a Sphinx like blue feathers, you know, or you know, blue and gold feathers, then make sure like her jewelry is blue and gold, right? You kind of want to repeat themes like that. Let's face it, Sphinxie's probably pretty vain. She would wear matching stuff. Like she would probably tout her colors that match and look awesome together. So I don't think she'd be a mismatched Sphinx. Now, you know, getting a little blood on yourself when you're eating is one thing, but you know, wearing colors that complement is always a good idea for a upwardly mobile young Sphinxy girl. Let's see here. Just trying to figure out how far down. It's very evident where some of the fur stops. And you can get away with just kind of blocking it in. You want to kind of use like little brush strokes like fur. Like this when you're coming down off of here, just to keep the furry illusion going on. I'll probably have to reapply this when I go and paint her lion parts, or I'll have to layer over the top of it. And if I'm going to be layering over the top of it, then I could just use this same brush stroke and utilize the black that I've already laid down and just paint some gold and buff colors over it to kind of blend it in. I mean, okay, fresh blood is really, really bright when it's over a light color, but it is dark when it is over a medium or dark color, Jetta. So the thing to remember with blood, and this is a mistake that I see all the time, is that if you want it to be bright, you got to put it over something light. Light gray, light yellow, light blue, light anything, you really light. Like, otherwise blood really doesn't look like that bright. If it's like soaking into fur or it's soaking into cloth, it easily loses its vibrancy. So, I mean, fresh blood, and the thing is that blood stains are different than fresh blood. So fresh blood stains doesn't make sense to me, because blood stains are usually like turning brown, whereas fresh blood is like a splash, right? Well, if it's a red and black scheme, yeah, like bright red and black obviously are a scheme like with Deadpool and with, you know, various Sith people, that tends to repeat. But I mean, the bottom line is that bright colors do better with other brighter or very, very dark colors. They can also look good with very, very light colors, but when you use a really bright color on a model, unless it's very small, like if you're using a very small area, the rest of your colors kind of have to be bright also. Bright or like neutral, like black, white, or very close to black or white. Like for example, walnut, which is a very dark brown, looks great next to a bright red. So does a very dark blue. And like NMM gold can look good next to bright red. But it just really, I mean, it probably then you want like white. If you have somebody, a character that always wants to show the blood on them, like to scare people, I'd put them in white, because then you could paint all that blood all day. White is the only thing that's going to make fresh blood look really bright. White or a really light gray. But like I said, really, really light colors, like white that's shaded with light colors. Oh, yeah. If Sphinx was messy at lunch, I might be able to pull something on the gold, because gold, also that's the other thing, is over metallics you might see more of a fresh blood, but even then I think it's going to look a little darker. I mean, that's why Games Workshop's like Blood for the Blood God is actually a dark red, is because blood loses that bright red so fast when it all begins to clot and dry. Like really fast. So really, if you're using like that Blood for the Blood God thing, I don't think I've got any out here on my thing. I've got it somewhere. But I've never used it. I tend to not like, most of the models I paint, I'm not going for a gory effect on. And if I am, I'll just use paint and gloss sealer. But yeah, so like if Sphinx was a bit messy at lunch, but the better model to do that sort of thing on, like I actually have, I don't know where my example is, but I showed somebody, I did a sketch that showed like blood on white fur, and that's like a far better, like if you got a white werewolf or a really pale gray werewolf, that's a really good way to do, a really good color to do blood on. Yeah, and you also need to undercoat that lava in white, Jelly. Like, make sure you use white as a base coat and use like really dark brown for your darker lava rock that isn't molten. And start with that. Then introduce your reds and oranges. And you will have greater success. Because if you undercoat, I think I've showed this. I know I've showed it on my Patreon. Like, if you go... Are you on my Patreon, Jelly? If you're on my Patreon, check out the painting yellow thing. I disguised it, but what I did is I used this figure, which is a Darkstorm figure, apologies. But what I did is I actually had, she had a Zenith here, but I undercoated part of this with white. And then I showed people how many layers I had to paint over the black. But you could see, even after a couple solid coats of yellow, you could still see that sharp line. And the white yellow, the yellow with the white under it, was so much brighter than the yellow with the black under it. So with lava, that's what you want to do. You want to put anything that's going to be bright and glowing, you want a white undercoat on it. Anything that's not, you want to be a really dark undercoat or black. I usually use actually a blackened brown because... you don't really get the true black turning to gray ash until it's cooled a bit. And if there's molten rock right next to it, it's likely not going to be cooling. So, physics. Yeah, I have some banana flour. I haven't tried banana bread with it yet, though, Twinstonoma. David would probably be super happy with me if I made banana muffins at some point now that it's getting colder. Yeah, brown is still gonna, if it's a darker brown, the blood still isn't gonna work. It's just gonna, if they wore brown, then they're trying to hide their blood. And same with red. Like, red on red really isn't gonna show very much. Alright, I think we're good. I think we're good on our base coat. So let's pick a bright blue to do. Yeah, I mean, that's likely why they made the Sith different colors like that. I mean, it probably was a story design factor more than... I mean, it fits with the story to have more bloody colors or colors that blood would stand out on, but I'm sure that they also just wanted to differentiate them between warm and cool, bold and more subtle, things like that. All right, blue. What do I want to do? How about cyan? I might do cyan blue. You guys don't use cyan blue a lot. It's an underrated color. I love it, so let's use it. There, let's see here. Okay. So this is a very different color, as you can see. Cyan is a great blue. It is actually made to be a mixing cyan, so it has a touch of white in it to give it a little more coverage and to bring out the blue in it. And it's a little bit greenish. So it is actually very close to a true cyan blue. Although being paint, it will never act like an ink, because we all know the CMYK, the whole cyan, magenta, yellow, black. You can like utilize that kind of thing in mini painting, but you'll never get quite the results they get in printing because you're not using a fully transparent medium. So sure, you can paint with magenta, cyan, and yellow. David does it all the time, and he gets great results, but you're not going to get really vibrant colors out of that when you start mixing them like you do with an ink. If you use the pure form color, then it's pretty intense, but even this is less saturated, though, than clear blue. I do not know what a Sophie doubloon is. That's what we want, right? Right, Pendrake? Because people are going to look at the face first anyway, so we want the face to be really, really good. All right, so I am going to see. Usually when you're highlighting black, anything you try to put over black is not going to stand out very well. Like, if you want it to stand out, you have to do an underpainting in white. So I'm going to actually utilize that because instead of doing even though these two colors are very different, I'm not going to do a 50-50 mix. I'm just going to put the cyan over this black in the areas that I think will be highlighted. And because it's going over black, it will look a little darker. Now, I can see on the screen it's going to look really bright. So we'll see how that works. I may need to blend it in with a little bit of black just doing wet blending. And I'm going to be concentrating on areas where her highlighting is. So actually the fact that it shows up more for you than it does for me, because the camera just loves to grab. If there's black and I put anything over it or a dark color, the camera just loves to grab that. Like it really is sensitive to light-dark balance. So the fact that this is going to look more vibrant for you than for me actually works fine, because it lets you see what I'm doing better. Although in person it blends into the black a lot more. Justin, do you know what a Sophie doubloon is?
Yes, actually. It is just a cute name we gave the channel points. It's nothing special. No,
Okay.
just now it's probably
More
going to
than
change from that to something else too at some point.
Oh, bonus for watching the stream. Right, yeah, okay, so like channel points. Yeah, all right, exactly. So things you get for watching. Eventual rewards. Emotes when we make them up. Things like that. I was just reading about those the other day, actually. Channel points, not Sophie doubloons. I also found out that to get more, I was looking for more, how to get more emote slots on my Twitch. It turns out, guys, there's another reason to get partner. Because they cap your emotes until you get partner. Evil Twitch. So I haven't used the last emote slot, I think. But I'm annoyed. So that's a lot of blue right there. So let us break that up a little bit. I'm kind of just blocking it in at this point, so I'm not like being like really conscientious on as far as how much it is. It does look a lot dimmer in person, but I'm okay with this. I don't want her hair to look blue, remember. I do want it to look black with blue highlights. So after I kind of block this in, I'll look at it and I'll say, all right, that's a lot of blue. The other thing that I need to remember, though, is that I'm going to highlight over the top of this by adding white to the blue. So it is going to come up to white, and that is going to change the blue here. It's going to look less blue. So I may leave it as it is and do a trial run. Hi, Achilles. Do a trial run with highlighting it and see how much blue I lose. Because if I'm covering up a lot of blue with thin white highlights for the top of her head, because, reflecting sky and all that, then it is going to look less blue, and it might be enough. I think I'm probably going to have to re-add in some black. But remember when I first start highlighting hair, guys, and this is true even if you've watched or read some of my PDFs on the Patreon, which is patreon.com/paintingbig if you want to go check it out. But I tend to highlight in blocks, right, when it comes to hair. I don't pay attention to strands until the very end. Then I bring the strands out. But first, I'm more interested in the bunches of hair, the locks of hair, and bringing those guys out first. Only do strands at the end. And you can kind of, when you're blocking in, if you want to roughly approximate strands, that's fine. Like I'm doing a little bit of streakies up here, you can see it. But I'm not paying it, I'm not like really going fine. I'm not like super trying to bring out strands. Yes, I'm glad you like this blue Cornico. It is really nice. It is actually one of David's, my boyfriend's, primaries. Like it is when there was a point he was painting only like he would use black, white, cyan blue, candlelight yellow, and magenta. That was it. So he considers it a necessary color. Like of all the blues, it is his pick. It's the one he reaches for. Now there's definitely some bunches of hair. Now it isn't always evident, like, like a bunch of hair, it may all kind of be jumbled together. Like obviously this is her mane, so it's a little tangled. And just do your best. Like I can definitely see that this is kind of a section that comes up to the front. I can see that there's kind of this big section here on the side. Got another section off the back. And like I said, I'm not afraid if I go too far over with the blue right now, because I can always take the black and touch it up instantly, because the black covers so well. So you can always go back, and even with a thinned black, you can really kind of feather it through and minimize your blue. So as an aside, Justin, I had a terrible dream last night. It was...
Oh, no.
I was on the Great British Baking Show, which we've been watching, right? Because the new season came out. They actually made all of the people quarantine, all the contestants and the judges and the talent, all quarantined together for 2 weeks so that they could film the show and live together for like 8 weeks. Which is awesome because I didn't know I was going to get Bake Off. And if you have not checked out Great British Baking Show, you must. It's a reality TV show, but being British, it's far superior to most American reality TV. And it's amateur baking. But anyway, so I was on the Great British Bake Off, except it was the food version, and we were all trying to cook chickens, and I couldn't interpret the oven settings because it was all in like some weird metric thing, and it was terrible. I was by far the worst, and I was kicked off the show instantly. So it was yeah. I don't know. There's just those fail dreams you have, right, guys? Like, have you all had a fail dream like that where you're in some competition or you're taking some test and you are the most awful, and for some reason nothing makes sense and you get more and more frustrated? Yeah, exactly, right. I do not know. I'm so glad I have a hot tub appointment today. I'm like, obviously I need to relax a little. But yeah, it was really high anxiety because I do get cooking anxiety sometimes, right? Because I cook for David a lot, and when I mess it up, which is rare, but every once in a while I do, right? Because you do. It's just life. I feel so devastated when I mess up, like, cooking dinner. Like, if I do something that just maybe I over-brown something, it just gets a little bit of char in there or something like that. And I was terrified last night because I did chicken marsala, which turned out really well. But there was definitely a point, because our stovetop is kind of tilted, where part of my Le Creuset was kind of going black because the oil was all pooling at the other side. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to like ruin dinner. It was bad. But yeah, so first world problems here. Yo, Zambies. We're talking about horrible test anxiety dreams, or in my case, horrible being on Great British Bake Off, episode dreams, and being terrible at it. The dreams where you're terrible at something that you should be good at. And we're also painting the Sphinx with blue highlights in her hair. Yeah, man, the anxiety, right? Especially when you love Great British Bake Off like I do, and you've watched every gosh darn season, and you're, Paul Hollywood is your trolling idol, and and then you're on the show in your head, and you're terrible. Worse, they were all trying to help me, and nobody could help me. It just got worse and worse and worse and worse. It was terrible. I don't know what's in my subconscious these days, guys. Maybe it is the pressure of freelancing, because everything's on you. And it's like, you should be good at it, but sometimes you feel like you're not being very good at it. So that's probably it. It's probably just like a little buried work anxiety. No, definitely no. More like the Paul Hollywood pitying look. You know that look? Yeah. So yeah, anybody who doesn't get this, go and if you've got Netflix, go search for the Great British Baking Show. Start at the earliest season and watch all the way through. I guarantee you will binge watch that sucker. It will take you a while. And it will make you want to bake tasty, tasty things if you have any baking aptitude whatsoever. If you have no baking aptitude, it will make you want to eat tasty, tasty things. So don't go into it hungry. But it is a really cool British reality show. And I like to bake, so for me it's valuable because you get attached to the contestants, who are usually pretty cool people, and they produce some really cool stuff every once in a while, and and then it inspires you to maybe try. Like, I had to try the Madeira cake. I've developed a Madeira cake recipe that was gluten-free after I saw it on one of the seasons of Bake Off. Madeira cake is like usually it's a citrus cake, so it's a citrus flavored cake. So it's like lemon Madeira is what it usually is. So it's lemon cake. It's kind of like a sinful lemon pound cake. It's so good. Oh no, Zambi's got tackled. Yeah, they'll help each other, right? Yeah, Kroniko, exactly. Cool, Saltor. I'm glad your pink kit shows up soon. You'll have to put up pictures of your attempts as you work your way through it. The photo is under your fur baby. Yeah. GGB. David introduced me to Great British Baking Show. And then we spent just like anytime we were together up till I moved out here, we just spent time watching it in the evenings together. Paul Hollywood bread right now. Ooh, I have the baking. I have their baking book, the Big Book of Baking, that features a lot of the recipes from like their earlier contestants and some of the technicals and stuff. Yeah, the barbecue show. We're watching that one, Image, actually right now, and that's another good one because even though it's American and it's obviously patterned after Bake Off, but they help each other, right? And the people are cool. Don't tell me who wins. Don't tell me who wins because we're almost to the finals. No cake for Rex. Yeah, exactly, Jellyware, right? They do such weird, like, baking, like, sometimes obscure baking recipes. And then you look them up and you're like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know what a Queen Amman was until Bake Off. And then David gets them at the bakery down the street now every Saturday or Sunday. Sunday morning is pastry day here. Yeah, well, Bake Off, everybody does help each other. I think the British shows maybe are more like that, Val. But yeah, baking, very, very cool. So if you've not watched the Great British Bake Off and you are looking for something to keep yourself entertained, there are like 11 seasons now. So like you have a lot of watching and it's super fun. I still think the original comedians were the best comedians though. Yeah, the barbecue contest on Netflix. It's the American Barbecue Showdown, I think is what it's called.
Oh, I've been watching that.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. We're down to the last 2 episodes now, David and I. We watch it in the evening before bed. Now let's mix up some cyan and white. That'll tell us how much, if we've got too much blue in her hair, or if it's going to work out. Probably will need to put more black in it. Oh yeah, the technical challenge. And now it's Prue. In later, Maryberry had to retire. I suspect just because she's like really getting up there and she didn't need, to have a filming schedule really at her age. Although she's in pretty good shape, it seems. But yeah, Prue. I like Prue too. Prue has the same wicked sense of humor that Paul does, except even more wicked sometimes. She was a good replacement. Yeah, you should totally binge the barbecue show. Like, they do some kind of obscure stuff, but then they do some really cool stuff, too. And you learn about a lot about grilling and barbecue, too. I like that. I like how they talk a lot about, both about how barbecue, like, certain barbecues and meats should taste, and how you want to do different types of smoke, and how you, should be able, like, how you want more smoke or less smoke. Like, I like that they talk a little bit about technical stuff.
Uh-oh.
Huh? Uh-oh?
Internet dip.
Oh, I didn't get anything. Let me look at mine.
Yeah, your bitrate's down to 400 and you're at 10 FPS.
No notifications on my end. Looking at my metrics. Stream quality is good. So it's got to be Twitch.
You want to run a test for me real quick?
I will.
Unless it just balanced out. Hold on. It might have just hit a...
Yeah, because my OBS says only 2.7's dropped frames. New window.
Yeah, it's telling me your bitrate is at 10K, which is insane. Oh, and then it just dropped again. Okay.
That's because I just ran a speed test. So I'm running a speed test now. That's why it probably dropped. 1 second, everybody. Yeah, it says my ping's only 6 milliseconds, and my upload is 1,000 Mbps, so that's good. My upload is 35. Yep. Yeah, it's right along. It looks great on my end.
Okay.
So if it's
that one could have just been because I'm in the green on Twitch's side too, so it could have just been a hiccup.
Yep.
We'll see if it continues.
All right, cool. I will stop. Yeah, download was 1,000. Upload was actually 39, so it was actually a little bit better than we pay for. So yeah, boop. Yeah, well, it's not me, and Justin says it's not Twitch, so it's probably just the internet. Let me just get my screen back to where I want it. Yeah, well, it's not, like I said, I've gotten 0 flags this morning, and it says it's really good. So it's good. We wanted to, next time we saw this sort of stuff, everybody, we wanted to kind of run that speed test real quick just to make sure, to see if it was my internet, because we didn't do that until later last time.
And that particular event right there lasted like 3 seconds. It was very, very brief.
Right. So what I'm doing here, guys, is I'm not putting this highlight, which is about, I would say about 4-to-1 cyan into pure white. I'm not putting this highlight over all of the blue. I'm leaving a little bit of the previous blue underneath it. You can kind of see up here where the outer edges I'm hitting with this. And I'm doing more strandy things now. Like if I see clearly sculpted strands, I'll do them. Otherwise, the brushstrokes will just be in the direction the hair is growing, which should be pretty evident on most animals and creatures, because the sculptor will have sculpted it that way. That's the way the tool strokes will go. So we're putting little touches then in. And if we see anywhere that's really vacant, like this area, we could come in and drop a little blue in just to see. Now, again, we don't want this hair to end up looking too blue, so we'll probably tune it after we come back. I actually have pretty dialed in. I have a giant ring light, HM, and my giant, I call it the sun. That's its nickname because it's so bright that when it's on, David doesn't need any light on his side of the room. But this is the sun up here, and the sun is actually, it's a newer, so it's actually a nice ring light, and it's got a warm to cool setting.
We're having another big dip here. Hold on.
Oh, yeah, I'm still not seeing anything bad.
I'm at 300 bit rate from your end, from your receiving from you. 11 FPS, yeah. It might right the ship here in a second.
Alright, I'll give it a second. I'll respond to Anara here.
Looks like it. Well, yeah. So what it seems to do is, and this is indicative to the same interference and spikes that Jox was having, where what'll happen is your FPS will dip down to about 10. Your bit rate will go down to about 300 or 400, and then whenever it's almost like a faucet that gets stuck, and then all this water comes rushing in, your bit rate skyrockets up to 10K, and then it balances back down to where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and I'm coming at about 4% dropped frames right now, which they still say is good. But it's like 1.5% higher than it was a second ago. So
right, which means that OBS is definitely reporting it on your end. It's just it's in smaller spikes. It's nowhere near as bad as it was last week.
Yeah, I would expect that. I mean, I haven't gotten, because OBS hasn't given me any blips. Last week, OBS was giving me all sorts of blips. So HM Road Dog, I don't find that it's necessary. I haven't bothered. Oops, sorry. I haven't ever bothered looking at the exact temperature setting because I don't find it's necessary. What you do, what you should look at if you're really concerned is you should see both, one, what appears to show you the truest color on the figure, and two, if you're using a ring light for face lighting, like I am definitely, you need to figure out where you look good, where you don't look too like old or pale, because the cooler the light goes, the older you tend to look. It tends to add that ashy tone to your face, and the warmer it is, the more complimenting it seems to be. So like for mine, I've got 10 ticks on either side of warm and cool, and I think I'm like 8 ticks into warm, so I only have a tiny bit of cool light introduced to my sun. So it's actually quite a warm, it's a daylight, I would say. It's equivalent to daylight. And then my other lamp is one of the ones we use at ReaperCon. So it's one of those little LED lamps that looks kind of like an upside down L. And I use the reading setting on that, which is the closest to a daylight. So what I want is a mostly warm with just a touch of cool so that I don't look too yellow. Yeah, right. Yeah, warm light. Well, that's what I'm using, Chibi. I mean, and it warm light tends to see, I used to hate old OT lights. People used OT lights for miniature painting. They're so blue, and I hated it because to me, I would look at the model and it would just shift all the colors. So what I want is kind of a neutral mix. You don't want to go too warm because then you're really yellow. So you want a little bit of a mix, but you usually want, like, I think I've got 2 ticks out of the maximum warm here. So I still, when I look at the LEDs, I can see a real mix of warm and cool, a really nice mix of warm and cool up there in the ring light. But yeah, so when you're miniature painting, I find that a daylight, which is typically a little bit warmer than cooler, but it's fairly neutral, is what you should aim for. So I would say that the sun is definitely warmer than my daylight setting on my other side here. I'm also getting some ambient bounce sunlight from my window though. So essentially, if you're looking at setting up a studio like this, look at exactly where you're going to be painting and dial in your lights accordingly. And make sure that you do have something you can adjust warm and cool. Like the ring light allows more precision than my little LED light, but I can still dial up and down the intensity on the LED light, and I can still, well, the ring light is LEDs too, technically, and I can still change the color. So, but I find that the really warm settings are a bad idea, just like the really cool settings are. You need to have a moderate in between. But, you know, you're never going to get, like, this is a nice ring light, but it's not going to tell me the exact temperature of the light. It's just going to, it expects me to do what I did, which is to look at my setup, look at my camera, and essentially do what I did here. Like, I was using neutral gray, you guys noticed, for my backdrop, right? So that means that the colors stay truer. And in my experience, that's what I've had the best results with. And what I did was I essentially just dialed in these lights until I looked good on camera, and then I compared how the model looks on my OBS screen, like how that gray looks, with how the gray looks in person. And when they're a perfect match, that's when I know I have perfect lighting. And right now they're a perfect match.
Oh, we're having another dip.
I mean, all that technical stuff, you know, it's useful when you're doing an art stream, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is engaging with your peoples. Your peoples are the most important thing. All your watchers, even if there are only 2 of them. We are lucky that we have more than 2 of them on this stream. But yeah, we don't say it enough, but we really appreciate y'all. Especially sitting through like little tech blips like this, you know, and making jokes and hanging out and tolerating it when Kiri's butt explodes and I have to leave for a few minutes. My ring light is Neewer, Neewer. It's a very well-known lighting company. Justin actually recommended them to me.
Yeah, we actually have a couple of the ring lights. We shot with a couple of them with Ron's videos last week.
Ah. Yeah, that can work in art as long as it doesn't make you look like you're Two-Face. For me, I tend to like be slightly, since what I did, because I'm sneaky and all that, guys, is that when I'm turning to talk to you, like my laptop and my face cam are like directly below the ring light, maybe a little bit off center. So I always get nice full warm light on my face when I'm talking to you. Which you know, keeps me from getting the kind of the two-faced effect that I might otherwise get with cooler light, slightly cooler light on this side. There are still some days where I can kind of see it, but when I adjusted the sun up to full, because it's also got it has a minimum and maximum. I can dim it and brighten it, and the sun is the brightest that it can be, so it kind of overwhelms everything. But whatever works for you, like that's what you say, Inara, is exactly kind of my point to HM Road Dog. It doesn't really matter. Like, there are people who are virally, like, awesome on YouTube who shoot videos from their crappy cell phone. And it looks like they're shooting a video from their crappy cell phone. But because they engage with their audience and because they, you know, they have cool things to say and they have enough tech presence to demonstrate what they're doing, they can do that, right? I've been listening to a great business audiobook about this stuff, actually, from a guy who is viral on YouTube. And who pretty much built a huge business presence for himself from nothing. And he talks a lot about social media and about the quality and about, you know, being authentic and about, you know, having a hustle, definitely doing a lot, and how it's going to be the hardest work you ever do to get really, really established if you're trying to do this sort of thing. But he also talks a lot about how it's the quality of engagement is worth more than the quality of your camera. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it can work too, Inara. I mean, it's all Neewer, Neewer, chibi. At least 2 cats watching. Well, that they know she's a cat then. Yeah, kudos for the Far Side reference. I love the Far Side. Who was I listening to? Oh, David Peterson, Mouse Guard guy, who I regularly raid on my stream. He was talking about how he grew up on Gary Larson and the Far Side. And how his mother thought that it was a harmless comic because she was familiar with the Sunday Papers version, but that there was also some stuff that Gary did that was definitely like terrible for a kid to read, and yet she didn't know that, you know, that it wasn't what her kids should be reading. Yeah, if you run strip LEDs, make sure that you can adjust warm and cool, Val. Yeah, I know, right, Inara? That's exactly it. I mean, so many of us are relying on, you know, our online communities. And what's awesome, though, if you think about going through this crap back in 1918, the big flu. What could you do, right? Now we have so much more. We can reach out to people. We can talk. It's the same thing with like nursing homes and stuff where, you know, if your great grandparent or grandparent is like, you know, at least slightly savvy in tech, they don't have to feel isolated anymore. They can reach out and like meet online community, you know, and make friends and have people to talk to, even if it's not in person. So it's a pretty big ring light. I want to say it's like 18 inch. Don't know. Got a ruler somewhere around here. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's about an 18 inch. I don't have time to measure it I don't have a big tape measure right by me. It's a big one though.
It's the really big one, right? It's probably, I think it's like 36 inches or something. It's really big.
It's not that tall. It's about 18 inches tall.
Oh,
I think.
Tall? Wait. Okay, so we have the really big one.
Like huge, humongous.
Because they have a couple of different sizes.
Yeah. No, mine is about 1.5 feet tall and 1.5 feet wide.
Oh, okay.
And that's manageable. I like the 3 foot one. No way. Like no way.
Yeah,
like
ours is giant.
Well, yours is even bigger sun then. Yours is like Red Giant Sun. But yeah, that would be unworkable for me in this small room. So, and it also would have been too much for me in my old setup because I had a smaller space. So, yeah, this is perfect for me. Absolutely perfect. Thought about getting another one, but I don't really have room to plant it on that side, and I like my little LED too. Oh, are they? Gary Larson started again? Awesome. Yeah, Bill Watterson, I know, and Berkeley Breathed, yep. Well, Berkeley Breathed is doing a new comic again, Valendar. He started a few years ago. Like, he brought it back. So, if you're a fan, go look him up on, I think, Twitter. He's posting new strips on there. Like, pretty much he has Opus waking up in 2020 or 2018 or 2017, and last time Opus was awake and they had his comic going on, you know, there was no internet, there were no cell phones. So a lot of the first part of the comic is like the rest of the team introducing Opus to like what has changed, which is pretty hilarious. Yeah, lighting is important. Yeah, exactly, Valendar, right? It's so good. Not only during quarantine either, you know, old people can feel very isolated and out of the thick of things. We don't involve them in family life in this country like they do in a lot of other countries. Like, it seems like the communities where our elderly live the best and longest lives are ones where they're still needed and involved in family life. You know, they help to cook, they help to watch the kids, they help to, you know, and we don't do that. I think we lose out a lot on how we isolate our elderly people. I mean, here are people who have lived long lives and know a lot more shit than we do. And we're, in many cases, and we are kind of sidelining them after they're a certain age, and it's BS.
The place I worked before Reaper, actually, there was a lady that was working there who was 93.
Awesome.
And she outright said, I mean, she was the happiest lady there. I don't think I ever didn't see her with a smile. But she was also, it's different when you can be at a job or when you're there, when you're just there to keep your time occupied, right? Or
Right.
and just to enjoy what you do, and not you're not just there because you need money, right?
Right.
But she said she stayed working because she said if she felt like it helped fight her arthritis for one, which I thought was, that's an interesting take too. But she said that it also kept her relevant. It kept her brain
Yes.
occupied and going, and she had a reason to keep going.
Right.
Um, I have no idea where she is today. That was like 7 years ago, so she
I
may not be
expect she
with us
probably
anymore.
worked
But
till she couldn't work anymore, because that's exactly, if you read a book, there's an awesome book out there, guys, written by a National Geographic writer who went around and essentially studied all the communities of the world that have really pockets of hugely long-lived people in them. So a lot of centenarians. And it's called the Blue Zones. And I've been reading it like bit by bit, but he covers like various pockets of just like cultures around the world that have a disproportionately large percentage of people who live to over 100. So like Okinawa, has a huge centurion population and things like that. And he kind of studies like the lifestyle and the culture and how they grew up, and tried to essentially to find things in common between all these things. And the elderly keeping involved, keeping a job or a purpose, even if you say, like you say, Justin, like maybe they're not working because they need to anymore, but they're working because they enjoy it, and it keeps them mentally active and it keeps them moving. I could see it fighting arthritis, just because you got to get up and down out of your chair all day. If you're at home, you might not have to. So,
absolutely.
and so I could totally see that. And I think that that's super smart. So like in Okinawa, they have like social groups, and they've got, people who still are involved in raising family, or they're, they actually have like more of a spiritual role in the community, and that keeps them involved, and they feel like they're necessary, and they have a job and a responsibility, and that makes a huge difference. So as you age, make sure that you're doing something that, lights you up, and that you don't think you have to stop, right? Don't think you have to stop doing stuff. Like, I don't think I ever want to retire. I want to always be working on something. Even if I take, like, lots more vacations. That's my idea of retirement, is just, running off and doing vacations more.
oh yeah, I plan on, obviously if I make it that far, I plan on being the really old guy who's playing video games and yelling stuff at kids who are a third his age.
Yeah. Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell's good too. He gets some criticism for very much cherry picking his studies, but I kind of look askance at those people, because everybody these days who writes a nonfiction book is going to be doing that. So yeah, I find Malcolm Gladwell really thought provoking. And if you want to get scared as hell about the environment, read The Tipping Point. Because toward the end of The Tipping Point, you'll be going along going, oh, this is terribly interesting. And then he says, yeah, when do we hit the tipping point on deforestation and wreck our world? In like 2 years. Instead of like us thinking we have 50 years to wreck our world in. And then you get terrified, and then you become like far more environmentally interested. Or if you're me, that's what happens. Because he's right. If things build up, and if they, until you reach a tipping point, and then you see rapid change, that means there probably is a tipping point for deforestation in our environment, and we could be racing closer to it. We probably are racing closer to it, but we don't know where it is. So you could get extremely rapid climate change if he's right about it.
There's also a lady on in the WoW category, Miss Ann, if you haven't seen her already. She actually, her Twitch name is WoW Grandma.
Uh-huh.
And I believe she's in her 80s. And
Yeah.
she's been playing World of Warcraft since 2005.
Right.
And she's now streaming it because, her kids help set her up a thing. And
Fantastic.
she engages with chat. It's very wholesome. It's fun.
Yay. Yeah, I've heard about her, but I've never tuned in to her. Maybe I should. It sounds like something I would enjoy. And I really love that also because it, it's like you get this kind of thing where, kids don't want to talk to old people nowadays. I don't think that's quite true. That sort of idea that youth doesn't care about like you if you're past a certain age. I think that there's a lot of people in the younger generations right now who think it's super cool when an older person embraces the things that they like too, right? So I don't know. I think it's a good thing. I think the internet is a really good thing for the elderly, and I wish more people's families helped them engage with the internet and made it not scary, for them. Just a thought. I think personally, I think we're all going to be playing D&D in nursing homes, in the next 20 years. So I can totally see that. D&D club in nursing homes. Can't you? I totally can. So I'm just going in with spot highlights with this blue-white mixture now. Again, we're tuning. We're kind of making sure our highlights are in the right place. I'm going to de-emphasize. Yeah, the tipping point is Nightmare Fuel. I agree, Koroniko. I mean, I love it, and I started re-listening to it recently. But, yeah, it is, Craft Melian. I think the same thing, right? It's all connection. It's all about connection. Like, I have no problem. Like, I still, when I was working at Reaper, I had a lot of friends who were in their 20s. I like to have people. I like to have friends. My oldest friend is like in his mid-90s now, I think. Who I should touch base with, actually, again, like, sometime around. But I like to have friends through different age groups. I don't really care about age. If you have something in common and we can talk about something, I'm in it. I'm there. I hate the attitude that some older people get to that, oh, kids these days, it's like, well, come on, you were just as bad in different ways when you were a kid. Maybe you didn't have all of the different ways to get in trouble that we do now, but you had a different way to get into trouble, right? So I don't like that whole generational attitude, generation gap. I think that the internet has reduced the generation gap hugely. Because so many, I found this out when I was working at Reaper, and we had a younger guy working for me in paint, and we would talk, and he knew all the kids' TV shows that I grew up on, like Thundercats and stuff. And the reason was that for his generation, they'd recycled all that, right? It was still on TV or on the internet. And so he was able to go and watch it. And so we could make the same cultural references, even though he was 20 years younger than me, which is a game changer. Plainer, we're talking about cool stuff. Right, exactly, Craft Melian, exactly. Right, yeah, they know a lot, right? Alright, we got a lot of hair on the back here. So what I've done, you guys can see, I've kind of highlighted the masses of hair, right? So we've got a nice big mass of hair here, so I've put blue on that. We've got a mass of hair here, and so that's got blue, this little mass here, a little bit there, down here toward the bottom. Then you can see I've got a couple of clumps over here. So I'm bringing all that up next. And then we'll back it down. We'll hit the back too. And then we'll assess and see. Like, she really doesn't look as blue in person, but she still has a lot of blue in her. So I will have to bring some black back in. One thing I do need to do, though, is I need to highlight her beads around her face. That's cool, Twisted Oma. Yeah, I think that maybe Generation Z's attitude toward the elderly is one of the best that I've seen in any previous generation. I have high hopes for Generation Z. If any of you are watching, I think you guys are awesome. In general, I like your attitude. Of course, everybody's different, but you know what I mean. It seemed like the trends in the newest generation are trends that I really like. And I'm technically a Gen Xer, so I was in that weird transitional. I think of us as a weird transitional generation. It's like, on the one side, you've got the baby boomers, which are my parents, right? Who have like this strong work ethic, and the company takes care of you, and you work at the same job for years, and all this, old-fashioned type stuff, and women were still mostly in the home. And then you've got Gen X, where everything started going weird and spiky. And now we've got this kind of new thing coming to settle in. Millennials and Gen Z. I think that my impression that I've gotten... Oh, that's nice. Early 20s to 48. That's nice, Netta. That's really cool. See, when you can sit and play games together, that's even better. That's so cool. Let me see here. From the Gen Z and the millennials I've talked to just seem much more practical about the state of the world. I mean, there's going to be exceptions everywhere, right? You can't make rampant generalizations like that without running into somebody who's not. But in general, the ones I've talked to, if anything, the only danger there is in getting kind of nihilistic and down, right? Like, oh well, the world kind of sucks right now in this way, but never believe that you can't change it, right? That's the thing. Don't fall into the trap where you want to see the world as it is, but you also want to see the world as it could be. But then I am definitely an idealist and a dreamer and a visionary. I have all of these things, so I tend to be a incurable optimist when it all comes down to it. I have my moments, but... So I'm putting her little beads in. I did a little blorf there, so I'm going to bring my black in and touch that up. There, she's got like a kind of a double row of beads or braid on this side. Gen X or full stop. Wow. Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Right, Trixie Kitty, exactly. You can't be held accountable for your stupidity if you lived before the digital age, and now everybody can be held accountable for stupidity, including companies, which often are these days, it seems. It's a lot of opportunity in the digital age, and a lot of changes. Biggest changes. All right, on the other side. And since I put the base coat on, I'm able to see that there is indeed a double row. So I'm blocking these in white, and we're going to put colors over them, but I want to have them there. Yeah, I prefer optimism. I mean, I've had very pessimistic people in my life, and in general, I don't like negative people. I prefer somebody who can say, yeah, it's hard, but you know what? There are ways to get through it. Because surrounding yourself with people who are always down is like a recipe to become down yourself. And some people you'll never change. Like, I have a friend who I don't really talk to much anymore from a long time ago who just is a really negative person. And at some point I had to just go, I can't. I like to be positive. I like to live in positive land. Alrighty, so we've got our beads blocked in, so that's cool. So I think... I have pretty high expectations. I'm just always an optimist. Like, if it doesn't work today, maybe it'll work tomorrow. Yeah, Jabberwock, right? Good thing for us, Gen X was, baptized in nihilism, yeah. Ha! That's awesome, Chibi. That your dad has done that. Hey, yeah, don't do stupid things like I did. I just always believe that it's within my power to make my life better. Like, I have a very firm-seated belief of that. That if I want my life to be better, I can achieve that. So I'm never disappointed in life, because even if I'm disappointed in my life at the moment, I am confident that I can improve things. Because if I can recognize that how my life is lacking, or how I feel it's lacking, then I should be able to work on that. So I am one of those people. That's good, Chibi Amy. Well, that's because tech was really new. It wasn't entrenched in our generation, Valandar. Like, those of us who... I was born in the 70s, and so there were computers in schools by that time, right? So, yeah, we were kind of raised on early tech, but we weren't as steeped in it as they are now. The minute cell phones landed, I think that was the game changer. When you not only had a computer in your house, but you also had a mini computer that you could carry with you everywhere, and you grew up staring at that thing. Like, that's different. Like, I grew up coming home after, work during high school, playing computer games at night, right, before I went to bed. But that's real different from the cell phone engagement, that extra level of tech immersion that has hit us since things like the iPhone and the Android. So I think that's where they're drawing the line. Who bought Gen Y their tech? Yeah. You're funny. Chibi, you are so funny. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, Gen X is cool. And also, we invented goth clubs. Outdoor season is officially over. Yeah. Yeah, it's getting cooler here, too. Which is nice, because it's almost NaNoWriMo, and I depend on crappy weather to motivate me to stay indoors and write during NaNoWriMo. All right, so let me show you guys my transition colors here. Let's see here. So, let me back up. Back up. Back up. Boop. All right, so now, so you can see that there's definite transitions here. So these are my transitions I'm probably going to do in the hair. So we've got our black, which being more than an hour, I need to drop of water into to keep it good. When you're working with a palette like this, as long as you're using big paint puddles, you're pretty good for an hour, but around an hour, drop of water into your paint. Usually you'll want to take kind of a break or a slack off somewhere like hour and a half. And if you've got big paint puddles, you probably can let them go to the hour and a half point or close to that. So whenever you have that take a break moment, that's when you kind of check your paint consistency and drop of water in. If you're working with the well palette. All right, so there's the straight up cyan. And this is cyan, which is probably about 4:1 to white. So you can see how pure white is very strong. It makes a very high impact. Now I'm doing more like 50-50. And I was using my thinned cyan to do that. So this is probably actually a little bit more toward white than toward cyan. It might be equivalent to like 3 drops of white, 2 drops of cyan. Then we've got my pure white right here. So I will be going up to pure white on the hair because black hair has very bright highlights. All hair has very bright highlights. But I wanted to show you guys my colors there. So I'm going to go and continue highlighting up her hair with that pale blue and then pure white. And then we're going to stop and we're going to assess. I'm going to do the front just because we can do the back tomorrow maybe. Or I might switch to a different mini. I'm not sure yet. It could be a surprise. Let me see here. I just want to catch up on chat here. All right. So let's get some of this. I think I want to add a little bit more. Remember, when you go lighter, you got to add more water. Otherwise, you're going to get big clunky brush strokes. And I want this to blend in just a little. I think this will work. Reaper John, resub. 14 months. Dear me. You were pretty tardy there, Reaper John, considering, you know, we got people on here that resubbed 17 months. If you're still doing black hair, yeah, it should. I don't know. It'll depend kind of on, you know, on your skin color precisely. I think it works to do the blue-black hair with the dark skin tone, but if you're darker than Caucasian, it might still work. Actually, let me see. So, like, let's look at Miss Bard here. She's got I started her with ruddy flesh instead of ebony. She's going to go up and be more warm. And would this work with her? It would. It'll be a lot more contrast. You can see it, right? Kind of look at it next to Sphinxy face where it looks even more natural. And it definitely looks blue. That's the problem with the orangey skin, is the definite oranger tone is going to make this blue look more intense. So what you need to do maybe in our then is to keep a lot more black in it. And I'm going to be going back in and putting more black back into this hair. But I think you'd want to minimize the blue highlights. It's just cyan with white Jabberwock. When I build highlights for my own painting, guys, I keep it simple. I usually pick an off-white that I'm going to use, or a pure white, depending on what I'm doing. This is going to have a lot of bright colors on it, so I go with pure white, because I don't want to dilute or mute any of my colors. And then I just add increasing amounts of pure white. It's the simplest way to build highlights, and as long as you remember what base color you used, you're never going to forget what formulas you were using then. You can always reproduce your work. So getting in that habit, I got in that habit back when I was using Faleo, before I even did Master Series Paint, before I ever created it for Reaper, before I was even working for Reaper. I just found that was a lot easier. I could always remember my color mixes because it was always whatever white or off-white I was using for the model. So now we're going to cover up some of our existing blue with this really light blue. And the really light blue is going to look almost white. Even though it has blue in it, it's going to look almost white because we have such a dark base. And this happens. Like, I could have started highlighting this black hair with this pale blue, and it would only faintly suggest the blue. So if I had wanted black hair that was kind of raven black, that had like bluish highlights, I probably would have started with a light blue, not with the cyan. But I wanted to try something a little bit funkier and more magical. I wanted our Sphinx to look a little more exotic. So that is why I went this road instead. So how much blue I cover up with this paler color is going to influence it. See, like this still looks very blue on this side, but now I'm adding these white highlights to this side, and notice the blue is going away. So yeah, Jabberwock. So if you always just add white to highlight and you remember what your base color is, which is super easy to note that down, then it helps. It helps me. I mean, at this point, I can pretty much look at a color and tell you what it likely is, but that, you know, that's 15 years of paint line creation, and not everybody can do that. So the more practical approach to that is to just write down your base color and remember that I always use linen white, I always use bleached linen, I always use, you know, pure white, or I use those varying on how saturated, how bright my color scheme is. So now we're going to take our little bit of white here. Now this is the point where I'm going to maybe pick out some strands. When I'm getting to the point of near white is when I start concentrating more on the strands. And again, if I blorf, it's not a big deal. I can come back with my black or my blue. And whenever you've got a lock of hair that's wide enough, you can turn it into two. Like here, I did 2 brush strokes on this one section of hair because I wanted to carry off a finer hair texture. So just because the strands are big doesn't mean you shouldn't take a big strand and take it and make it 2. Like here, let's get actually a little bit more on my brush. And do 2 strands there. Wherever you can put an extra strand. And I'm making kind of the poof of hair at the front of her head catch the light. And if I want, I can bring some of these highlights down a bit. Hold on, let me grab a little more water into my brush. Yo, Tiny Hand Raccoon Man. Hey, Everlina. Oh, sure, Everlina. Yeah, David teaches OSL really well. My man is so talented. I'm glad that it helped. And sometimes you just need a little bit, you're right, sometimes you just need to like get brave and try it, and it helps if you've got a really good reference. So I brought just a couple of strands down a little bit to give more of that blended in appearance. I think the other thing was that there was originally a mold line up here, so I'm kind of working around where the hair got a little chunky, where I had to adjust it. Now, the nice thing about doing these brighter highlights is that it lets the ears stand out more, right? So I'm gonna bring up the ears with a little bit more warm brown just based on my color choices here. I was gonna keep the ears dark, but the problem with that is that now they're not showing up very well. So I need to bring in, this tells me is I need to bring more of that warm beige color down, like here. I need to do that up here, and then it's gonna be lighter fur, cream colored fur probably, just like probably her underbelly will also be cream. And I'll do that in the inner part of the ears, and that'll help make those ears stand out because they're tiny and cute, but that means they're not showing up very well. So yeah, as we add the highlights, our hair gets less blue, and I haven't even added pure white yet. And you can do this not just on hair, but on, like I've done it on cloth for vampires. And actually I may be doing that. We're going to work on vampire skin for you guys for the $10 Patreon video. And I got her all prepped. She's actually a winter solstice queen from Dark Sword, but I'm making her into a vampire because she looks like she needs a vampire. But I think on her dress, I'll do exactly what I just mentioned. I start with black and then I highlight it with red. And it gives you this great red velvet look. So highlighting black with other colors can be a really cool strategy when you need contrast, when you're like, a lot of my colors are medium and light, and I don't want to paint anything just black. I want to keep like a lot of greens in this color scheme, or blues or reds. Then start with black, but highlight it with a color that fits with your color scheme. And then you get the advantage of like using a really, really dark color, but getting the color that you want, color accent that you want. So you can be very sneaky in the way you highlight black. Maybe I'll do that also. I'm going to use that model for a lot of tutorials, I think, on the Patreon. So, which is patreon.com/paintingbig. For those of you, painting big. For those of you who don't know, who would like to come over and check it out, I just completed editing on a video for you guys on werewolf fur texture. Val, you'll be very interested in this because I used the model that I was helping you on. So, and this is indeed one of the things you should do on your model. So fur texture on smooth areas of were creatures. And that'll be up today. I've got it on my list. Now that the editing is done, I'm going to give it one more watch through and put it up. Thought I would do kind of Halloween themed stuff this month. So we're doing vampire skin and werewolf fur. Were creature fur, I should say. All right, so then I've got to highlight this. Boom, boom, boom. So less blue now. Let more shiny. Notice how shiny it's looking because you've got those darks and the lights. Now, one thing we can do, if we think this is too blue, is we could actually glaze with black, which is not something you hear a lot, but it can be done. Trying to just pick out little bits of her hair. So at this point, if we decide we want to take it more black, we don't want to necessarily go and paint more black in between all the strands. We just want to take the whole thing down a little bit, the whole thing a little less blue before we do our final white highlight. Then we can do that. And it's difficult. Now, black is a really opaque color in Master Series, so that means it's hard to glaze with. Anything that's really opaque, you have to thin way down in order to get it to the point where it doesn't just totally disrupt everything you've done. So throw water in it again. If you have a little bit of Reaper Flow Improver, put a little bit of Reaper Flow Improver in it. When you have to thin down these paints to the point where you break them, Reaper Flow Improver has a nice leveling and suspension quality that helps with that. So helps keep the paint in solution as you thin it extremely. This is colored water. Like, it really is colored water, see? But we want that. Because however much you see it discoloring the surface is how much it's going to affect what we've already done. So we need to be very cautious with it. Thank you for the Patreon link, Quinty. Yeah, I do vampire skin kind of funky, which is why I'm doing it for my $10 level. Yeah, I use complementary colors in it. So I do gray, green, and pink with white highlights. It gives you a really unusual, almost pearly look. So I'm going to paint this glaze over all the hair. Notice how I'm going to actually do it just here and let it go so you guys can see the difference. And I just had a little bit of it on my brush. So see how bright it is on the other side? And see how one layer of glaze has really brought it down now. So now take some pure white and do a highlight over the area you just glazed. You will still have blue-black hair, but it will look a lot more like black hair now. And the blue will be de-emphasized. You can see it, in fact, just looking at it. So what I've done is with that black glaze, I've grayed out our blue a little bit. I've made it a little tiny bit more gray. So that's why the intensity is lessened and why it looks less cartoon. So whether you want it cartoon or not is whether you should do that glaze. I'm going to just bring in my final white highlight here. Just a touch here and there. Identify where you think your highlights are going to go, where the light's going to hit things, or where you just need to accentuate a detail. And there you go. So now on the right hand side of her, I still probably need to bring a little more black in, although in person she's a lot darker. But on this side, it looks just like normal black hair now. And on this side, it's still got a lot of blue. So which way you want it is whether you should do that black glaze or not. Everybody's good, Sarge. We've been working on this Sphinx for about a week. I started her last week and she was going so well that I just decided to keep going on her. So while I have all my blue, we're just painting her with black hair with blue highlights. And I was just showing them how this side, it looks a lot less blue because I glazed with black to bring it more like black hair. And this side still is very cartoon, very blue. And which one you like is up to you. But now you know how to do both if you have watched this video or if you go back and watch the VOD afterwards. Because I've done all this hair in the course of the one video, which is what I like. I like to do it that way. Oh, whole week to paint after work. Nice. But yeah, so now let's get our blue. I'm going to just do a few more highlights since we have just like 5 more minutes. Anybody have any questions? We started kind of more on time-ish, so and we didn't have an emergency from a certain small dog. So we were able to get a lot done today. And if I get the rest of this hair blocked in real quick, then I'll feel okay kind of taking a vacation from Miss Sphinx for a couple days and starting a different model. Remember, when you're first putting your highlights on, you are not worrying too much about strands. You're more looking at locks, like bunches of hair. And also remember that since the light is falling in a particular way, your highlights should kind of be in a line. So like here, where it's all the back of her head, and it's kind of got this cascade of hair that's kind of going this way. You want all your highlights to line up along that arc. See, I put a brush stroke there and I shouldn't have, but that's okay. We can work with that. So this area is kind of the equivalent of this area on the front of the head. So I can bring it up a little bit over here. Like so. Funny, Everlina. Yeah, I mean, that's why I always say, Jabberwock, when people ask me, I'm going to paint for a competition, I want to enter my local painting competition, what kind of model should I pick? And I always say, you know, you want a really good sculpt, a sculpt that doesn't have a lot of issues or clunky spots, because, you know, sometimes if a sculpt is rushed, you can have some details that aren't very clear, or maybe things aren't very smooth. Stuff like that can really frustrate you when you're trying to paint something to a high level. So always look for a model where, yeah, the sculpt just inspires you, right? This sculpt is really good. There are very few issues with the Sphinx. You do need to go in and do some mold line removal on her front paws especially, and kind of look at that and on the front of her breastplate. But overall, this is a really clean sculpt. It's a really nice, it has some great details on it, like little beads in her hair, and her face is really well done. Yeah, I would start with a lightish gray. Val, that's what I almost always do. In fact, Val, if you look, I just opened up the painting white video on the Patreon, and it is white hair. It's white hair for the gin. And I'll talk about that. I will tell you in that exactly what I use. So you should have access to that video because I remember reactivating it. At this point, I think if you're on my Patreon and you have a question about a specific color, I probably have covered it. And if you are a patron and you have an additional question about either about a color I've already done or one that you perceive that I haven't done, feel free to message me, because I'm always looking for more material that can be useful to you guys. Just message me and go, and I want you to do a feature on X. This color or this set of colors. How the heck do I use Succubus Kiss? Things like that. I probably will do something on using Succubus Kiss in the future, because it's a weird color, but it's super useful for some things. Yeah, Julie did an amazing job on this mini. Absolutely, Chinner. Alright, so I think we've got the big strands kind of figured out here. She's got bigger masses of hair back here. Like up front, there's a lot of little tufts and little bits, but on the back, you've got more of this sweeping, longer mane kind of areas that you want to block in. You can see I'm still keeping a lot of black. The black isn't purple, so could be your monitor. It's likely to be your monitor, Val. More likely than your eyes, but could be your eyes, I suppose. I don't think it looks purple at all. When do I zenith? When it makes, when I want a strong, I use zenithal when I want a strong overhead lighting effect. So if I want a strong overhead lighting effect, and I want to see the areas of the model, so I know where my darks should go, like on her face, there's a big shadow right where you see it. That's when I do zenithal. Or if I'm doing a lighting effect, like a directional lighting effect, in this case the light source is coming from this way, I will zenith in that case to remind myself and give myself a little bit of help on where the light is going to hit and where it's not going to hit. So I use zenith if I'm looking for a strong directional or overhead lighting effect. Although on bones, I never use zenith because I paint right over them. The only way for me to use zenith on bones, if I wanted to, would be I would base coat it in a dark gray, probably, or a black. And then maybe carbon gray. Carbon gray would be a great base coat for zenith on bones. Once I have that paint layer, I can then use a spray primer with impunity. But yeah, pretty much for me, if I'm painting a model regularly, I always know where my highlights are on a regular overhead light source. So it's only if I want to do a very dramatic one, Jabberwock, where the shadows are very sharp and dark, then I will do it to remind myself to make those shadows that dark. Because otherwise I have a problem as an artist where I don't make my shadows dark enough. Like, I tend to back off of making my shadows really dark. I'm fine going up to bright highlights, but it's always been harder for me to visualize shadows. So I find that the zenith thing helps to remind me that, hey, Anne, you need to make this a lot darker for this light source to be this bright. Because the brightness of your light source is going to influence the darkness of your shadows. They work in proportion to each other. Shadows are always darker on a sunlit day than they are on an overcast day. Gotta extend some of these strands up a little bit. Don't want to just have a block of black here. Want to kind of extend my strands a bit. Just a couple of them. So that you can see a connection between these two areas. And again, there was a mold line, I believe, across her head that I took off. So now I'm just also doing that to disguise that. I think they're one and the same, Jabberwock. I find that the underpainting effect is overrated. I actually demonstrated this. I don't remember if I think I did do it on Patreon, working with underpainting. You will, in reality, start to cover up your underpainting with your very first coat. And by the second coat, it will have almost completely disappeared. So the only way to actually work with zenith, like there's this myth that you can do a black-white zenith and then just, use those, and those automatically become your highlights. Only if you're using GW contrast paint is that true, or washes. But even if you're using washes, there's opacity to paint. Even thinned paint has opacity, and you will cover up your highlights and shadows. It'll start to disappear by the second coat. So in reality, the only way to use zenith is as a guide. To preserve that zenith, you must work at it. It does not happen automatically unless you are using one layer of GW contrast paint. Maybe two. Maybe you could get away with two. But because the GW contrast paint is so transparent, it will work in that way. But you will find that with any other paint line, especially the really opaque paint lines like Vallejo and Scale 75, even thinned down, you will start losing that zenith right away. So the thing to do, I swear, I'd have to look. I'll look at my Patreon and see if I've done a working with zenith thing. I've done so much. It's been almost 2 years, so now I have to check. Now, Margaret, you are so useful. If you're watching this, thank you for that directory, because now I can actually go and check everything that I've done, because I had to check. Now every time I come up with an idea for something, I have to go check and make sure I haven't done it already. It's very funny. So we're starting to bring up that lighter blue. And mostly I'm going to place this in the middle of strands, but sometimes if I want to pick out a little detail, like some of these strands swoop off to the side here, then I'll focus on the ends as well as other areas. It's nice to bring up little tips when the tips have movement, where they're swaying to one side or they're swaying to the other, then it kind of makes the sweep of fur more interesting. And then I find I will put a highlight on the tip of the strand in that case. And now we're about quarter. Yeah, absolutely. No, you're not crazy, Jabberwock. I think that people misrepresent zenith a little bit as the total problem solver if you don't want to shade and highlight, or you don't want to work as hard to shade and highlight. And it can help you because it reminds you where to shade and highlight. But in order to keep that zenith active, you must use underpainting, or you must use active highlighting and shading after the first coat to remind yourself of where they are, because they will get dimmer and dimmer. I don't remember what the test was I did. I think by the third coat, the zenith was pretty invisible, unless you're working with a color like yellow. Yellow or orange, you can keep it a lot longer because those are such transparent colors. So yeah, it varies a little bit by the color, but in general, what you want to do is put down a layer and then start highlighting and shading straight off of that layer while you can still see where all of your highlights and shadows should go. And it's at that time that I often will put in underpainting for textures. I'll start introducing that at that time, because if I'm going to be kind of underpainting to keep my zenith anyway, I may as well do something fun with it. All right, so that's coming along. So here I'm leaving, you can see on the back, I've got so much more mass here that I can leave a lot more black, and it reads a lot more black. So don't we have a trash can we have a dumpster. I don't remember if we have a trash can in Bones. I thought we did. Have we not made a trash can yet, Justin?
I don't think so. Like you said, I think we have a dumpster, but...
Okay. I just realized I forgot to put you in my ear, Justin, so you are Justin from Beyond the Grave today. Hey, and it's suitable. It's Halloween, so that's all right. Now that we're at the end of the stream, it's probably not worth me putting the plug in my ear. But anyway, do we have a raid out there that looks promising?
Let me see here.
I did a little extra today since I didn't get to stream on Friday, so.
Yeah, we have Dices.
All right, yeah, let's raid Dices. I like Dices. Not that I like a lot of our raid people actually, but awesome. So there you go, guys. This has been a tutorial on how to highlight black hair with blue, and either keep it blue or make it less blue. Make it more natural blue-black, raven hair, so to speak. I think she's coming along really well. I think the blue works really well with her skin tone, too. What's a raid? Sarge, seriously? It means we go and raid another streamer so that you guys can keep watching Twitch if you want while you're working, and you don't have to watch me anymore. Also, we help them with their numbers, so... Spooky
right,
Justin
Miss Ann.
emoji. Alrighty, well then, guys. I hope you had fun. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll either do more Sphinx or I may switch to a new model. Ooh, it'll be a surprise. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And I will see 2 dumpsters. Yeah, we just don't have a garbage can. All right, have fun. Say hi to Dices for us, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys very much. Don't forget this afternoon we have Miniature Monday at 3 p.m. Central. Thank you for coming out and hanging out with us this morning. Afternoon for some of you folks, night even for some people. But thank you guys very much. You're awesome. Keep being awesome. And we love you guys. We'll see you this afternoon.